Hello there and welcome to People, Politics and Power. I am Imoni Amarere. The world today is still in the throes of the coronavirus pandemic and its attendant negative impact on the global economy. The recovery process remains slow even as vaccine rollout continues to gather momentum. The Nigerian economy, which recently made a quick comeback from recession, still appears on tender footing as it grapples with several issues. The outlook remains fragile over uncertainty in oil prices in the international market, rising inflation, increasing unemployment, security challenges, and social tensions. In what is regarded as the highest in 4 years, figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics show that headline inflation rose to 18.17%, an increase of 0.84% in March 2021 from 17.33%, which was recorded in February 2021. The composite food index, that is, food inflation, rose to 22.95% in March 2021, compared to 21.79% in February 2021, the highest in over 12 years. The rise in the food index, according to the NBS, was caused by increases in prices of bread, cereals, potatoes, yam and other tubers, meat, vegetables, fish, fruits, oils, and fats. The situation is worrying, with the level of unemployment put at 33.3%, one of the highest levels in the world currently, thereby placing the country's misery index at 52%, which is a reflection of the weak economic activities in the country. Some analysts predict that if Nigeria does not fall into a third wave of COVID-19, the private sector of the economy will see growth in the coming months. However, dollar illiquidity remains a major concern for businesses that rely on importation of raw materials. Economists and other experts say food inflation is rising because of insecurity and attacks on farmers, which are hurting agricultural production. The Central Bank of Nigeria has squarely placed the blame for the galloping food inflation rate on herdsmen and bandits. In addition, the Apex Bank fingers increases in prices of petrol and electricity tariffs as key drivers of headline inflation. Now on the program today, we shall examine the linkages between security and the economic well-being of the people. We shall be talking about insecurity in the country and the rising food prices. We shall also attempt to seek solutions to the challenges. As always, the people are our center of attention on this program. We shall have joining us very shortly on this conversation some very eminent economists and, of course, development experts, investment specialists who will be telling us all about inflation and how food is brought into the mix. Stay with us. All right, thank you so much for staying with us. People, Politics and Power. Let's get to meet our guest analysts. Two of them are here in the studio with us, and one other will be joining us via Zoom from Lagos. Right here in the studio, we have Ogbonna Ukuku. Ogbonna is an investment and economic development specialist. Thank you so much, Bona, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Also joining us in the studio here is Professor Sharubutu Garba. He's Executive Secretary, Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria. Prof, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And from Lagos, joining us virtually via Zoom is Muda Yusuf. Muda Yusuf is the Chairman, Lagos Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much, Mr. Yusuf, for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm actually Director General.
Oh, Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce. We apologize for that. Great, welcome. All right, Ogbonna, let's begin by asking, I used to ask this very basic question because we sometimes have this conception that everybody understands all the issues, especially when they are economic and political. But first, let's get to the basics. What is inflation?
Inflation can simply be defined as when the food prices or price of goods and services, keeps going higher, or when the amount the funds in circulation, is shrinking and cannot be able to, purchase some of those goods because the price of the goods will be going higher. So when when more funds are pursuing lots of, little goods, so it causes, the price of those goods to go higher. That's actually the simplest way to define inflation.
Yeah, because day to day, Nigerians complain about rising food prices, rising prices of even other commodities.
Of course.
And they want to understand why this is happening.
Yeah.
Prof, why do you think, what is responsible for this kind of situation?
Well, where you have a situation, like the economists will say, that when the demand becomes, when the supply becomes shorter than what the demand is, then you have a situation where prices of things will continue to go. We are living in a very, very competitive society. And the unfortunate thing there is that the food crisis is one of the early indicators of the fact that something is wrong within the polity. And so in a situation where you have the food supply being very, very short and the demand is very high with rising population, then you expect inflation to actually bite harder. Like I said, food crisis is always the early indication that there is something wrong within the economy.
But what happens, Prof, in a situation where there is a short supply of products? There is also a short supply of money in circulation. Because that appears to be what is happening in the Nigerian society today. There is very little money in circulation, and that little money is pursuing very few goods and products in the market.
Yeah, that needs a serious economic analysis. But from the food chain angle of this discussion, we are trying to look at a situation where you find out why is the food actually in short demand. For a very long time, we had relied on importation. And all of a sudden, the government decides to come up with a policy of growing what we eat. And in a situation where people have not been successfully driven to the farm, then you expect that the food supply will be in short demand. But that is not just it. When you were opening up this discussion, you brought in two factors that were actually responsible for this scenario. Number one is the COVID-19 that has discouraged people from going to farm, which is a reality. But most seriously is the issue of insecurity. Now, with insecurity, everybody becomes afraid of going to the farm. But remember that these two factors only came in to complicate the situation, because factors of production had already been there weighing down in terms of input, in terms of laxity, in terms of movement of our younger ones from the villages or the rural community into the towns. So these are all factors that have now been complicated by the issue of insecurity. So everybody now wants to move to the town because the town looks more secure than what you have in the rural areas. The example of Plateau, Nasarawa, Zamfara, Katsina are all there. You find out that these attacks are no more in the cities, the attacks are more or less in the rural areas. And production, as far as food is concerned, not synthetic food, as far as food is concerned, production takes place within the rural community. So there is now constant movement. And so the farms are being abandoned. The other factor is the elitist nature of our society. Farming has now become something that has been relegated to the background. Nobody wants to go into farming. And because nobody goes into farming, nobody actually produces the food that we're going to eat. Of course, finally, when the government takes any measure, people are quick to cry over some of these measures, even if they are for the best intention. Like the closure of the border, everybody knows. When Mr. President came out to say, let us close our border in order to concentrate on what we are producing, everybody went to town and people were really shouting. Yes, there's always a price for every measure that one takes. From the monetary angle, maybe the experts in economy may be able to give, but this is actually the angle from the agricultural point of view.
Let's bring in the Chamber's perspective on this. DG Muda Yusuf, I'm sure you've been listening to our colleagues here in the studio. What's your take? What's your perspective on this rising rate of inflation, both the headline inflation and, of course, the food inflation?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon once again to our viewers. Yes, I agree with the position that has been taken by the panelists in the studio. The factors, they are multidimensional. First, we have the supply side. They are basically supply side issues, just as they have said. The security issue, I agree with them. It's a major factor. There is also the factor of the cost of transportation, because most of the vehicles that move food items across the country are powered by diesel, not by petrol. And the cost of diesel now is quite prohibitive. Don't forget, diesel has been deregulated long ago, along with aviation fuel and some others. So each time there is an upswing in crude oil prices, the cost of diesel goes up, and that affects the cost of transportation. Then, of course, there is also the issue of the productivity in agriculture itself. Now, there is very little application of technology. The bulk of our agricultural activities are still done in a very traditional and primitive way. Close to 80 to 90% of practitioners in agriculture are still using hoes and cutlasses. And with a population that is growing this fast, there is no way such level of productivity or output can cope with the growing population. So that again is a major problem. And because of the nature of agriculture and the way it is practiced, it is not quite attractive to the younger generation, particularly those who have the benefit of education. You cannot have a graduate and you're asking to be carrying hoes and cutlasses. We need to create an environment that will attract such class of people, that will attract the elites and a lot more into agriculture. That is still not happening yet. We have very little mechanization and all of that. Then there is the factor of climate change. That is also a major factor. In addition to the problem of insecurity in the northern part and the middle belt, and in fact, in the whole of the country, there is a very serious issue of climate change. We have been seeing increasing desertification in the northern part of the country. Most of the arable land are no longer that arable. And that is also affecting productivity, is affecting the capacity of output to grow and all of that. So these are some of the things. And of course, we also know that there is an element of the monetary factor. That's the monetary phenomenon. Because if you have a situation where there's a growth in money supply, possibly as a result of the financing of deficit, either by the CBN or whatever, increase in debt financing and all of that, These things have a way of affecting, of contributing to inflation, because it affects the general price level generally, whether it is food, whether it is whatever. Because we have seen some very staggering figures now of the kind of financing of deficit that has been done by the Central Bank of Nigeria. These things are highly inflationary. So these are some of the factors that I believe have been driving inflation. And unfortunately, inflation is the worst enemy of the poor, because it crashes their purchasing power, it collapses their income. And just as you said at the beginning, you have a situation where the economy is stagnating, many people are unemployed, people are being laid off, some people are being paid half salary, and prices are going up. So it's double jeopardy. And even for those of us in business, it's also affecting us because cost of production is increasing and purchasing power is weak. And not, in many cases, you cannot transfer the entire increase in cost to your consumers because of consumer resistance, because of weak purchasing power. So invariably, there's an erosion of profit margin. There's a reduction in sales, reduction in turnover. So these are the dimensions of the phenomenon of inflation that I like to share.
All right, DG, stay with us. Let me come to you now, Ogbonna.
Yeah.
In the last 19 months or thereabout, Nigeria's headline inflation has been on the increase. Apart from all of these factors that Prof and the DG have itemized and what you said earlier on, what else do you think may have been the key driver of this trend over this period?
Let me just add one very important thing: efficiency in our system. When I say efficiency in our system, this is a great denominator that actually affects the cost of production, affects cost of transportation, affects everything that we do. Now, if there are policies that are coming out from the government and then those at the local level, which is where these things happen most of the time. Agriculture is local, just like everybody have also alluded to. Agriculture happens at the local government level. I mean, the farms are in the villages. Now, if the state or the state governments don't plug in properly into the programs of the government or the interventions of the central bank, it becomes a bit difficult for anything to work seamlessly. So it makes it a bit difficult for it makes it a bit difficult for efficiency to thrive within the system. So that's one thing. And number two, the other issue we need to look at is a raw material supply strategy. Now, there's a little adage in South America where they practice so much agriculture. See, any farm without a factory is just a forest, and any factory without a farm is just scrap metals. What that simply means is that if we're doing the little that we're doing in agriculture and we don't add value to it, we end up not being able to take care of this population that we have, that everybody's saying that we're exploding. Yes, we're growing 4.something% growth in population. That's almost 5 million people being born into Nigeria yearly. That's a lot of people. That's more than some countries. So there has to be this deliberate, there has to be this intentional effort towards using strategies. I say this all the time. Economic wars are not won by strength, but won by strategies. Until we begin to look at streamlined strategies, carrying people along, people fusing into government programs so that we can all come out from this quagmire. If not, we'll just be here, they will roll out programs, CBN will come up with interventions, Anchor Borrowers program and all of that. If those who are at the local level are not marrying, are not being absorbed into the program, it becomes we'll just be wasting our time, really.
Prof, two issues that have been thrown up in the course of this discussion. The DG talked about the fact that over time, we are failed to transit from subsistence farming to mechanized farming. In spite of all the challenges, I mean, particularly the security challenges that we face today, the fact that we have remained stuck in our subsistence farming practices is an issue. And then, of course, what Ogbonna just talked about, the failure to add value to the agriculture, to the little that we produce, may also have contributed to where we find ourselves today.
Well, thank you very much. These 2 points they have raised are very, very valid. But you see, in a situation where, just like Obona said, that you remain persistently in one place without moving forward, and he is talking about the buy-in of people into government policy. Once we do not have that attitudinal change, honestly, we are not going anywhere. Number one, we treat every statement that comes from the government as government-owned and government-implemented. There is no way you will have a situation where a proclamation is made and people decide not to follow, or they follow with doubt. Definitely is going to be a problem, because we need that change. You see, the issue of policy somersault is one other issue that people must key in, but even as people are beginning to adopt a policy, we again come in with one. The agricultural policy, for example, if you go through time, let us start with the early ones that most of us know. First of all, we got in the issue of Operation Feed the Nation through Obasanjo's regime. Shagari came with the Green Revolution, and it kept on like that until it came to the agricultural transformation agenda. And I want to say, with clear conscience, that this is the first time we are seeing a development of a policy over another one in such a way that they will continue. There's continuity. Because the current agricultural promotion policy is a development over the agricultural transformation agenda of the Jonathan administration, then come to the Buhari administration. Now, if we remain consistent, what we need now is the buy-in of people into that policy. That is one. Secondly, everybody looks at agricultural policy or any other policy in this country as a federal government owned. So like it has been said, the state government sees it differently, or he either pursues it from an ethnic point of view, or from a religious point of view, or from a state point of view. Then the local government sits down there and they are not keying into that agricultural policy. Of course, if you take the agricultural promotion policy, the strategies are built in there, but the implementation of the strategy becomes a different thing altogether. But how can you grow agriculture when in a situation where everybody becomes a farmer, when there are legislation that is taxed for farmers? Ask yourself this question. Who is a farmer in this country? What is the definition of a farmer in this country? That is one. How many products of the agricultural colleges or the universities do we produce? There are over 100 universities in this country that produce agricultural scientists. Where are they? Are they on the farm? Are they in government institutions? You ask that question. Secondly, the agricultural colleges that are supposed to be technologies of agricultural revolution, because they are the actual farmers. By our own research, less than 30% of them are into agriculture. Now here we come with a central bank package. The packages are there. They are numerous. They are very attractive. These are packages that can lead them into actual production, or packages that can lead into processing and all the rest. But I can tell you without iota of doubt that those of us that are attracted to go and take these facilities are not conscientiously going to use these products for the purpose of farming. And that's the more reason why, true or false, the Anchor Borrowers Program is now facing a hell lot of problem, because I learned that it has been suspended. Why? Because these monies invariably is either they are not getting to the right people, or they are not converting that money into actual production. So our take is this. If you produce so much agricultural scientists, if you produce so much of agricultural technologies, why are we not using them in order to sponsor them using this money? I have 52 colleges of agriculture in this country, 11 under my supervision. At least each of these colleges of agriculture produce not less than 20 HND that are supposed to be practical farmers, not office farmers. Now, how many of them actually have the wherewithal to go? Remember that it is the children of the poor who have not, in quotes, been able to enjoy going to the university that eventually come to some of these our colleges of agriculture. With due apology to most of us that had that opportunity. Now, they graduate with HND and come back to the house. And so if they do not have the capital to start farming, What do? If they don't have the capital to start this, and we brought up a proposal, why don't we tax these people? They have their certificates, they have their parents, they have local government, they have state government. Why don't we utilize them in order to bring in this anchor borrowers money or N-Power money? Because they have a rudimentary knowledge already of agriculture. So we should be able to hold them responsible and let them go to the farm and let us see the practicability of what we teach them. Secondly, sir, or thirdly, sir, you see, if people retire, that those of us that are preparing to retire, everybody, if you ask him, he say, I want to start farming. He wants to raise livestock. He wants to raise poultry. Yeah. He wants fishery. But I can tell you this, that most of these people collapse. If you move from Kefi here, from here to Kefi, you see all the farms there. Ask the question, what are those farms producing? Little. They are not even recovering. There's no cost recovery farming. Why? Because the technology that is supposed to be applied in this farming is not there. Why is it so? And I am always quick to refer to the medical doctors. If a medical doctor graduates today from the university, he undergoes internship. Do you know why? It's to acquire extra skill. These are practical skills now that will be able to make him survive that environment. A pharmacist is the same thing. The veterinary surgeon is the same thing. The typical Igbo man today, if he earns the whole money in this world, will not go and pick up his junior brother and just open a shop for him. He has to allow him to go through tutelage. What I am saying here is that it is only in agriculture that you have people who will just take their retirement money and go to get a farmland and just begin to farm. Now you don't know the intrigues. You don't know when to clear the farm. You don't know when to seed. You don't know when to start applying herbicide. You don't even know the nature of fertilizer you are supposed to apply. Because if you rely on your consultant, if you rely on me as a veterinary surgeon to manage your farm, I want to become a millionaire through that money you are investing. So I will try as much as possible to see how I can make maximum gain. If the proprietor of that farm does not recognize or realize what he's supposed to do, I'm telling you, we will continue to dish out money to people who do not know the rudiments of agriculture, and we will try for the first year and collapse and attribute it to God. The next year we will fail, we'll attribute it to our brother. The next year we will fail, we'll attribute it to my neighbor who does not want me to be rich. And invariably, you keep on going down. So what do? What we are suggesting here is this.
We will come to the solutions, Prof. We'll come to the solutions. DG, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we will come to you, and you will be responding to some of the issues raised by Prof. and Ogbonna, and very importantly, we'll be looking at the issues of policies and practice. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. DG, let's come over to you now. Issues have been thrown up here. Is it a matter of government policies or a combination of government policies and the attitude of the people towards those policies and practical agricultural practices as they were?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think it's a combination of all the factors that have been very well laid out by the panelists in the studio. First, we need to address the issue of inputs, the cost of inputs. Because all over the world, agric is specially supported. Because agriculture by nature cannot stand on its own in the commercial space. And because agriculture is very strategic, especially from the point of view of food security, from the point of view of social stability, government all over the world goes out of its way to specially support agriculture. We are not seeing that much of support from the point of view of inputs. You must give credit to the Central Bank of Nigeria, at least from the monetary intervention point. Anchor borrower program, all sorts of intervention funds and so on. Of course, there are issues around whether these things are delivering outcomes, whether they are effective, but at least they have had some impact, which we must acknowledge. But generally, we need to have policies around making inputs available and making inputs affordable. inputs for agriculture. Things like fertilizer, things like agrochemicals, things like farm equipment, tractors, harvesters, and all of those things. So we should have a kind of trade policy framework or a tariff policy framework that ensures that there is no import duty on all of these things. Because most of these things are imported. And sometimes you need to see the kind of challenges that importers of these inputs also face at the ports. Struggling with issues of tariffs, issues of classification, devaluation, and all of that. All of these things make it very difficult for farmers to access inputs. Then there is the issue of land acquisition. If we must promote mechanized agriculture, land is very critical. Ease with which you get land is very important. Getting land, acquiring land is a very, very challenging thing. And this is not exactly in the purview of the federal government. It's in the purview of the states. You walk into any state and you say you need maybe hectares, 100, 200 hectares of land to do mechanized agriculture. It's not an easy thing. You have to deal first with the bureaucracy, you have to deal with communities and all of that and all of that. So those things also make it extremely difficult for capital to flow in the way we desire into agriculture. Then we need to look at agriculture within the framework of agribusiness. Because just as Prof said, or the other panelists,
Mr. Ogbonna.
We need to look at linkages. We need to be looking at value chain. Because there is no point you have the primary products, you are having issues with transportation, you are having issues with processing, preservation, storage, and marketing. We need to tidy up all of this chain, and we need to make investment and encourage investment across the entire value chain. The man who is growing the primary product is not necessarily the man that we transport. The man that is transporting is not the one that we sell. The person who is selling is not probably the one that we store. The man that is storing is not necessarily the person that will process it, package it, or possibly even export it. So when we discuss these issues, we should discuss these issues in a very holistic manner. We should be talking about agribusiness, agri-value chain, so that each levels of this chain are feeding into each other to ensure sustainability in agriculture. And the other time I talked about the issues of climate change and desertification. This makes it imperative for us to invest a lot more in irrigation schemes across the country, not just in the northern part of the country, so that we don't have a system where our agriculture is only dependent on rain. We're always waiting for harvest season, rainy season, and all of that. We should be in a position, as is in many advanced countries, to be able to farm all year round. That is very critical, so that you have consistency, you have steady growth in agriculture. And agriculture is also not only about crops. We have the poultry farming, we have the fishery, we have forestry, and all of these areas are also very important. Sometimes we don't give enough attention to these other components of agriculture, like livestock. I mean, there has been a lot of debate about grazing, ranching, and all of that, about dairy farming. These are broader things that we need to look at, so that we are not just concentrating on crops. There are these other aspects of agriculture that also we can attract private capital into, but we need to create the environment for this private capital to come into this space. And the environment has to be around issues of policy, around issues of inputs, around the issues of infrastructure, road network, rail network. All of these things feed into agricultural development.
That's what makes it agribusiness in real terms, as you say. All right, Mr. Ogbonna, it appears that at every stage, we seem to be looking at only the federal government. Agriculture today, I think, is in the concurrent list, which means both federal and state governments have some role to play here. But it appears that states and local governments are not doing enough in terms of food production. Is it that the policies are too centralized? Or what exactly is hindering the states and local governments from getting involved fully in agriculture?
On the face value of it, if you look at it properly, one thing I've come to realize is most people at the subnational always have their own plans and programs that is different from what obtains at the federal level. So what I think should be the way forward, going forward will be, anytime we're having a national plan as a country, we should get the states to be part of that national plan from the planning stage so that they can also make their inputs, so that from there, owning those programs become a bit easier, because I've looked at it from all ramifications. If you take countries like Brazil, for example, there's a particular province which is equivalent to our state here called Paranava. Paranava is not far from Sao Paulo. All they do there is cassava. They call that place the cassava city. The smallest farm you will find there is 31,000 hectares of cassava farm. So these are the kind of things you can replicate in a state like Kogi State, where they have expanse of land and then they grow cassava in Kogi State. Life becomes a lot easier when there is a program between Kogi and the federal government or central bank provides that, that linkage funding, the financial engineering that is required to make sure that program works. But one thing is key, which is one thing I must mention here. The states will prefer a situation where you carry those monies and give to them to implement at their own pace and with their own style. But no federal government will want to do that. They want a partnership, just like what you have in education when it comes to UBEC. You bring this, I bring this, and then it functions. But most of the time, if it's not going to be give me the money, the states will not allow it work, which is, I think, is just like we've been saying here. We need to get them to begin to change their mindset. I'm also proposing the solution. Let's have them from day one. As we're having our national plan being, put together now, let's have all the state commissioners of finance, state commissioners of economic planning to come in, make them part of the planning committee from day one. So that when we roll out the next plan for the next 50 years, they will, they will be part of it and then they can own it because they have made their contributions. Because some states that have not been able to cultivate or support programs, agricultural programs, up to, let's say, up to 3,000 hectares, want to build airports. And you're wondering, why would a state governor be thinking about airports when he or she have not thought about how to get, your agricultural input to a point where you can start producing, moving these things from primary products to finished goods where you can actually sell in the same population that we're talking about and make some more money. So there's just a mismatch. And then again, this is something we must also look at. There is high financial inequality in our system. The gap between the rich and the poor is so wide. It also affects the investment thinking. Now, if a man, for example, who does contracts with the Ministry of Trade or whatever, makes 30% of every contract that he gets as profits, and then every year he makes that money, he doesn't have any need. He won't think about it to go and do agriculture. So there has to be a strategy where government will now begin to see how they can twist, I use the word carefully, twist people who are already so comfortable to come into agriculture, whether by way of coming into it directly or by way of investing through what Prof have said, through a strategy or a structure which have been put in place where those monies have to go in. Oxfam also last year, I think it was Oxfam that brought out that report, that we have over $2 trillion dead capital in real estate, in lands that are not functioning. Monies are meant to work. You don't keep money. You put money to work so that's what engineers productivity in any economy. So when you have that inequality not solved, it becomes a big difficult. And then again, the last point I want to make here is our development finance strategy we need to step up our game so that we'll begin to solve some of these problems. We don't have a venture capital system in Nigeria, which is the initial, that's where it starts from. if I have an idea now, somebody has to believe in my idea to put money first. So I will have my EIA done, have my business plan done, be able to go through the bureaucracy of getting land to even do the farming. For a normal young person who just came out of school, how would he get the land? Where would he get all of this from? So he needs somebody who will support him from the beginning. So that's where venture capital comes in. We've not even had people who will invest in venture capitalists who will invest in fintechs. So, and you're talking about agriculture. So these are things, that's why I carefully use the word arm twisting. There has to be an arm twisting mechanism which will be fostered by government to make sure that those who are very comfortable, who make money from government or make money from the system, will be made to invest in agriculture, whether they like it or not.
Prof,
I could have loved to pick up from where he's.
yeah, please do so. In addition to that, I'd like you to also take on the issue of the Land Use Act that the DG spoke about
Okay,
earlier.
fine. But let me talk about this. And in doing that, I want to bring in a little bit of politics so that at least we'll capture the essence of your theme. Now, any campaigner that goes out to campaign to people in the rural areas promotes agriculture. Everybody promotes agriculture. And he brought in the issue of the participation of state, and you mentioned about the concurrency of the list. Have we ever sat down to analyze the budget of the federal government in agriculture and that of the state? Who is more serious in agriculture? I can bet you, if you analyze what resources our state governors are pumping into agriculture, you will find out that it's damn too small or virtually non-committal. Non-committal. Talk less of the local government. I can say, because I belong to an institution of the federal government. 2018, 100% budget release, 100% in the agricultural sector. 2019, 50%. 2020, 100%. Can you say that with the state government? Capital, no, because they don't see it as anything. Now let us go back to our legislators. I don't know whether we have been monitoring what the legislators are doing on the screen of our television. Yes, they empower, they give empowerment. I have noticed that a lot of these empowerment products they are giving is more of grinding machine.
And motorcycles.
No, let's say grinding machine. What are you grinding? I don't want to go into the motorcycle aspect because it's not my area. You are giving grinding machine to grind what? To grind what has not been produced? Or sewing machine. How many clothes do we have to be sewing? Because these are also product of cotton. So what I am saying there is that once we begin to prioritize agriculture as something, that is when you will now continue to see something very reasonable in it. Now, as for the land tenure system that you are talking about, up to now we have been battling with how to get our land system right. We seem to be overprotective of the land that we claim we have. Now, there are three ways you own land. It's either you buy, you inherit, or you lease land. So what is the problem? Today, let me tell you, if somebody comes from outside this country and wants to lease land, we'll give it to him for the purpose of agriculture. If your neighbor wants to come and lease land, you make the conditions so difficult that he cannot even get the land to buy. So if a Nigerian from Delta states wants to come to Plateau State, for example, and get land, he is subjected to all manners of things. And yet, we leave this country, spend the people's money, and go out either as chief executives or chairman of committee or minister, and then we go out there and try to woo investors. There are a good number of investors we have in this country. All we need to do is to give them that assurance and say, this is where you want to go. Give them the guarantee, rather than sitting down and we're just throwing tantrum at ourselves. Like, let me tell you this. Personally, I have about 230 hectares of land that I inherited. Now, all my children are in the city. And I don't want anybody to farm on that land because I say it's my own. Nobody farms there. I'm not encouraging anybody to go to that place. And then my children are not likely to come back to the farm. It's the same thing with Ugochukwu. It's the same thing with you. It's the same thing with director. I'm saying that in hypothetical sense. That we are not even encouraging as elites, that I am talking here If you ask me where my children who are grown up and are graduates are, I'll tell you they are in the city looking for job. I have never encouraged them to go back to farm that 230 hectares of land we have. The same thing with everybody. So, and some of these people are looking at us as movers and shakers. We are supposed to be the torchlight of the community, and yet we do not want to go into agriculture. I have an opportunity to get my children employed in all forms of places, so I push them there. And yet I want the son of a poor man to go back into the village and say what you are going to do. The lands are available. I can assure you the land is available. That is one. Finally, let me say this, that we tend to neglect the land in terms of protection of the land. If you go through the scheme of service of the federal government, there are people we call forest guards. If you look at their function is to police the forest. Our forests have remained unpoliced, they have remained unprotected, and so hoodlums, bandits, kidnappers, haramas, these are their comfort zone now, because we have allowed the land to lie there. They have followed, they have overfollowed, trees have overgrown, and we are afraid of entering into the forest, and so nobody is there. So we come into the land.
Except for the bandits and
of
the
course,
criminals.
I mean,
so they have taken over all of it.
They have taken over the land.
And they are not farming there.
And they are not farming there.
Yes.
They have taken over the land. And let me tell you, like I said when I was giving my contribution in terms of this banditry, believe you me sincerely, unless we move to protect that forest, this thing will not end. I'm not casting any spell. But the truth about it is that once you take over the forest, just like we have taken over the towns, I'm telling you that agriculture will grow, farming will continue, and then of course insecurity will be a thing of the past.
And of course we have a lot more food to eat and a cheap and affordable rate.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Prof, and thank you, gentlemen, for your massive contributions on this discourse today. Ogbonna Okuku is an investment and economic development expert. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Professor Sharubutu Garba is the Executive Secretary, Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria. Thank you, Prof, for your time and your contribution. And Mr. Muda Yusuf is the Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. He joined us virtually from Lagos. Thank you so much for your time. Great. That's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of the program People, Politics, and Power. Remember, the people always at the center of governance. Bye for now.